Every U.S. state owns a building to protect and display priceless pieces of history. All except one, Rhode Island. But a new archives building is a pricey proposition.
$101 million, but $70 million public dollars.
Meanwhile, there's concern for one of the state's most valuable possessions. The Gilbert Stuart George Washington portrait at the State House is worth $30 million.
It's not being preserved correctly. So you can start to see cracks in the Gilbert Stuart.
But experts agree something should be done to save it. But what? And how much will that cost? And later.
Governor, is it true that this is one of the largest domes in the world?
That's right. It's the second largest unsupported marble dome in the world.
Not seen on TV for 6 decades, the first full-color local broadcast in Rhode Island, a personal tour of the State House.
This is an NBC 10 Your Voice, Your Future Town Hall, preserving the past.
I'm Brian Crandall. We're going to spend some time today looking at the efforts to preserve Rhode Island's archives and artifacts, all 10 million of them. It's a push that began in earnest 6 years ago and continues today. Rhode Island's rich history, the first colony to declare independence from England, a full 2 months before the Declaration of Independence was signed. The first to attack a British warship, the HMS Gaspee. But it's the last in the whole country to still be leasing buildings to store priceless archives.
So what we're looking at on this table is worth millions of dollars. So you want it to be shown.
Rhode Islanders and people visiting Rhode Island should have an opportunity to see this.
Okay.
That this is living history.
I'm going from the year 2000 to the 1800s to the 1900s to the 1700s.
In 2019, late NBC 10 political reporter Bill Rapley learned that former Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea proposed a new building, an archive and history center, to hold our copies of the Declaration of Independence, original blueprints for the State House, and other historic artifacts. A local architect drew up an ambitious rendering of what it could look like, inside and out, with a $52 million price tag.
I absolutely believe that we can really build a cultural historic economy from this Rhode Island State Archives.
That plan didn't go anywhere. Current Secretary of State Gregg Amore has been pushing for one too, telling NBC 10's Gene Valicenti last year that the $100 million project he was pitching at the time would have the state footing about 70% of the bill.
No, I spent 8 years on the House Finance Committee, so I know what the competing interests are for dollars. But at some point, we're going to have to do this, and it's not going to get cheaper. We have to preserve. I'm very concerned about the preservation. The governor is kind of focused on the tourism aspect of this, which makes sense. We have a real opportunity here in historical tourism, and we already have a great arts and culture economy. But we have an obligation to preserve these documents in a proper way. And as you can see, there isn't too much empty space here.
The General Assembly didn't go for that either, but did allocate $500,000 to study the issue. And I'm joined now by Rhode Island Secretary of State Gregg Amore and Ingrid Newman, who is the senior conservator at the RISD Museum. Thanks for joining us. And we do want to start first with the potential of a state archive. Secretary, you've been talking about this now for a couple of years. Why do you think the state needs that, and what's wrong with the leased facility that the state is using right now?
Yeah, so we're the only state that leases a facility, and we're the only state that doesn't have a museum history center aspect to the programming. So we should own our own archives, plain and simple. We should not be an outlier. But the lease space is fine for preserving documents, most documents, but as an exhibit space, it is not appropriate. In fact, Rhode Islanders can't see many of the treasures that we have without appointment and without them being removed from their storage now. And in many, many states, those treasures, those artifacts and documents are available for the public to see all the time.
You had proposed an archive center. It didn't go through the General Assembly last year with a potential price tag of $100 million. How do you get people, it's probably not on the front burner for a lot of people to preserve the past when they're thinking about what's happening now, what's going to happen to them tomorrow and in the future. How do you, I know you've been talking about it a lot, but how do you get people to think that this is important?
Yeah, so that it's necessary, right? These are public records. We talk a lot about the Declaration of Independence, the Act of Renunciation, but they're all public records and they are required. Storage is required for these public records, and we use them, and agencies use them, and researchers use them. Everybody uses them for their own purposes. What we hope to do is have a place in Rhode Island that is ours, that will also attract folks from Rhode Island, but outside of Rhode Island, so they can see some of these unique historical records. And I get it, there are competing interests, but this is something we have to do because we're just about full at the Broad Street location.
And one of the things you talked about too is the George Washington portrait that's just across the hallway from us here at the State House, painted by Rhode Island artist Gilbert Stuart a couple hundred years ago. And you're concerned about the condition of that. It's hanging in the stateroom. What's your concern there?
Well, it's unique, right? There's a strange dichotomy here, right? We have the Declaration of Independence and other key documents preserved well, but the public can't see them. This portrait, the Gilbert Stuart portrait of George Washington, is available for the public to see, but it's not preserved the way it should be. And so, you know, we think both should be happening. We should be able to display the Hancock version of the Declaration of Independence so that folks can see it, just as they do at the National Archives or the Massachusetts Archives or the Virginia Archives. And we should make sure we take care of the Gilbert Stuart as well.
And Ingrid, when you see a painting like that hanging across the hall, I mean, you work in a museum taking care of precious pieces. What do you think when you see it hanging there? Is there a concern?
Well, paintings are very complex artworks. They're composed of organic linen and inorganic paint. And those two materials, the paint and the linen, react to the environment differently. So when you have a fluctuating relative humidity or temperature, because there is no HVAC system in this building, you're going to have the linen, for instance, expanding and contracting when the paint isn't, and you could get cracking and you could get flaking. I don't know if the painting has been examined recently, but that might be a first step, is to examine the painting more closely, to look for any micro fissures or flaking. And you also might want to consider the light that comes into the room. We call these the agents of deterioration, basically, relative humidity, temperature, and light. There's also pollutants, because there isn't an HVAC system every time the door is open, for instance. Pollutants, although Providence isn't a very industrial city, but still, pollutants enter, sulfur, nitrogen, and they can have an effect on the painting as well.
When you see that it's hanging in a public room, do you think something like that, I think the estimated value is like $30 million, should be somewhere else?
Well, I think on the pro side, the painting is elevated up on a mantle, which is good. People can't literally touch it and so forth, that kind of thing. On the con side, yeah, it's not glazed. For instance, it isn't covered by glass or acrylic, which is something that we do in the museum, mostly acrylic. To protect the surface. I think the value is, considerable value is very important. And you have to think about the age, the 200 years. We would like it to be preserved for many more hundreds of years. So I think what we're looking for, what would be ideal, is a consistent environment for the painting to live in for the
right.
future.
And for the people who've been in the State House know in the summer it gets quite stuffy in here. Secretary, is that something you would want to put in an archives? And does that take away from a different place to view it publicly here in the State House, where it's been for a long time and people walk in and say, hey, look at that? Yeah,
if there's a way to preserve it where it is, then obviously we want to do that. And you know, I brought the Gilbert Stuart up as an example because it is accessible. But we need to preserve it correctly because of its value, because of what it is and what it means to Rhode Islanders. And we should be able to do that with all of our great documents and artifacts. So, you know, I'm very flexible as to what should be in the state archives, but we know that things that are important to us as Rhode Islanders and important to the nation should be preserved properly.
And the concept of this state archives and the price tag, and I think maybe that scared some people off last year in the legislature. Have you downward revised that since then? Just tell us where this is now going after it didn't get through the legislature last year.
Sure. The legislature appropriated $500,000 for us to do more such site study and program study, and really to scale back the project. And so we're in the process of doing that now, and we're expecting reports, complete reports on some of the sites we looked at and some of the programming that is reduced in size but is open to expansion in the future. So we're going to go back to the General Assembly with another proposal. But I also understand that there are competing budget interests. We're in difficult budget times here in Rhode Island. But I have to stress to the public and my colleagues in government that this is a pay me now, pay me later situation. Eventually, we're going to have to move out of the leased space that we're in. because it will not serve our purposes. And so there's change coming one way or the other, and that new lease may be much more expensive. And again, we'd have to refit a new space so that it is archive appropriate.
And that $500,000 that the legislature did set aside, do you think that is going to come up with a comprehensive plan? We're going to do this site at this much money?
I do. I'm confident that we'll have a proposal for the legislature to look at, vet, and debate.
And do you think the price tag will be lower than what you thought?
It will be.
With the $100 million, was that like the Taj Mahal of archives potentially?
It created 50,000 square feet, and it created proper exhibit space, which we do not have, and it was designed to serve us for many, many years to come. So we'll try to do the same thing, only with the ability to add on to the building, or maybe sever the building storage area as compared to display area.
And Ingrid, you work in a museum. We're talking about creating something that's trying to keep important things in good condition. How hard is it to keep things like a painting or a sculpture or something like that in good condition?
Well, I think you need to hire appropriate professionals to do an exam, for instance, of the painting. I think that you need to think about the environment, as I've mentioned, the relative humidity, temperature, light, and security. It is a highly valuable painting, and at the museum, for instance, we have guards and so forth. It's something to consider. So there's many prongs to this approach. I think that paintings in general, Gilbert Stuart was an excellent artist. The materials he used are very high quality. And I think that with a lot of care and attention, the painting will last a very, very long time.
Secretary, you mentioned the cost and these economic times. Do you think, and my guess is one of the reasons you were proposing this, is the state had a lot of pandemic relief money that maybe could have been used in a lot of different ways, although this would have had to go to the voters, or that was the plan, to put most of the cost to them. Do you think that window of opportunity has been missed now that the budgetary climate is going in the other direction? No,
this was proposed by my predecessor, and because the need exists. And the need will exist no matter what the budget situation is. We're going to have to figure out a way to do this so that we can preserve Rhode Island's documents. But we'd like to enhance that and have an economic component to this project so that we can draw people in from around the country, around the world, to see these uniquely Rhode Island artifacts and documents. And we think that's a winner. And we know because we open up the State House from time to time on a Saturday, and visitors come in from all around the country who look at this place, which is in and of itself a museum, and really enjoy the experience. So we know that there is a historical impact that folks enjoy across the country, and we think they can do that here too.
And is the leading contender for a site still across the street from the State House?
That is one of the sites. We believe it will be the leading contender, but that is one of the sites. I'll let the reports speak for themselves.
All right, Secretary Ingrid, I want to thank you for your time here. And coming up next, we're going to talk to the House Speaker of Rhode Island, who controls a lot of the purse strings about this topic, and also ahead, Rhode Island's plans to celebrate a big birthday. Welcome back to our NBC 10 Town Hall, Preserving the Past. Our first panel, we talked a lot about the case for creating a new state archive to house Rhode Island's important artifacts and documents, and the big price tag that comes along with that. Now, last year, lawmakers in the General Assembly put the brakes on that idea, but did set aside some money to keep studying the idea. We're joined now by House Speaker Joseph Shekarchi, and the House Speaker plays a significant role in controlling the state's purse strings. Speaker, thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure to be here, Brian. Thank you.
Just tell us, first of all, why that plan didn't progress out of the legislature last year. What was the problem?
It wasn't ready. that I was supportive of the plan. I still remain very supportive of it, but I feel that archives preserve our history, and I was looking in a strong education component about that. I was looking for some of our state colleges and universities to step up and play a part of that and to participate in that, because a state archive should be a place where young people, young Rhode Islanders go and learn about history. It should be like an education opportunity as well as a tourism destination, as well as preserving our history. So I was hoping that they would do that. Also, we weren't ready. We didn't have a location, and we didn't know the total cost of that. So those were too many unknowns to put before the voters.
And when you talk about education playing a role, did you want them, the universities and stuff, to help pay for it? Of course,
yes,
some of that
absolutely.
is part of the state
we have
money.
some great universities in our state, and they have some very significant endowments, and I think they should play a part of it and be a part of the construction of it, the management of it, and the educational opportunities that it could provide.
Was the big price tag, though, at the time about $100 million, was that a deterrent?
Yes, it was a deterrent, and I was looking for some, I wanted to have some federal components, some private foundation money components, maybe some components of financial help from our universities, and then the state. I think the way you fund something like that would be to use it as a building block, they call it a capital stack of several different sources of money.
Do you share a concern about the condition of where the state's documents are stored now in a leased building that wasn't built for that purpose, the only such facility in the country that is that way, not a purpose-built archives?
Yes, and I do share that concern. I congratulate Secretary Amore, who's looking for a feasible, financially available opportunity for us to do this, and I will help assist in that project, but we need to know all the details, and that's why the General Assembly put some money aside to study it, so we could have some more really estimates on where it would cost, where it would go, and how it would be paid for.
Because the proposal was to put it before the voters on a bond for a big chunk of the
Yes.
money, but you thought there was too many questions to send it to them.
Yeah, we didn't know where it was going to be, and we didn't know how much it was going to cost. We didn't know where all the money was going to come from. We were going to go to the voters for partial funding, but we didn't have answers for the rest of it.
What is your, right, you always say, like, you have to say no to a lot of people who come to you
The speaker
looking
of
for
no.
money.
I refer to myself sometimes as the speaker of no.
But where does an archives, for a lot of people it may not really rank that high. You've got education, you've got healthcare, you've got infrastructure, you've got all this other stuff. Where does it rank for you on priorities? Again, something that could cost tens of millions, if not $100 million.
It's a significant amount of money, and I think anytime you're asking for a significant amount of money, that you need to have all the details nailed down before you go before the voters to ask for that. When I became speaker 5 years ago, I pledged to be a member-driven speaker, and that's how my leadership team is. And I will tell you, my membership, the leadership in the House reflects what our members want. As much as we perfectly clear, and this has not been a top priority of the membership of the House for a whole host of reasons of what you just listed. Healthcare, education, housing, all of those priorities are immediate needs right now. And that's not to say that an archives is not important, it is, but we need to have a plan and a realistic plan and a funding source for that plan, and I'm willing to make the state contribute as part of that plan. So when that plan gets put together, I think that's the opportunity to come back to the state, possibly go to the voters, possibly to use general revenue money, maybe some federal money, some RICAP money, some bonding money. I can go down the list of sources for money, but the state needs to play its part, and we're prepared to do that when we have a concrete plan in place with some real strong estimates for cost, because right now almost every project the state's been involved in, for a whole host of reasons, supply chain, labor costs, inflation, the prices have gone up significantly.
Well, the last time this was pitched 5 years ago, it was about half the cost, like $50 million. But when you talk about those funding streams, has a big window of opportunity now closed because all that federal COVID relief money is gone? Was that an opportunity that maybe the Secretary of State saw to get it built, and now that's gone?
To the Secretary's credit, I mean, a lot of projects came forward, and a lot of projects wanted a lot of the ARPA money and the federal money, the COVID money. I'm not sure if that money could have been used for that purpose, but obviously all money can be shifted around, so there was more of a supply of money available than there is now, but it ebbs and flows. So we'll have to wait what next year brings.
And just quickly wrapping up, overall, how do you say the state does at preserving its history?
I think it does a very good job. I mean, if you look around this building, you'll see a good portion of Rhode Island history everywhere. Portraits of our governors, portraits of our leaders of the state. We have a great history here. Secretary Amore does a phenomenal job at making sure and preserving that. I think we do an okay job. We can do better, but some states don't do as well as we do either. So we have to compare ourselves with our colleagues.
All right, thank you, Speaker Shekarchi, on that. When we come back, we're going to pivot to another celebration of the past, Rhode Island's plans next year for the nation's 250th birthday. The pomp and pageantry that comes with celebrating a big birthday, especially when it comes to red, white, and blue patriotism. So how will a state with roots and a role in the birth of a nation mark a major milestone next year? July 4th, 2026, 250 years of American independence. Are you confident that Rhode Island is doing enough to celebrate this big anniversary compared to other states?
Yeah, I'm very confident. In fact, we can do more than other states because we have more to commemorate. So, from the Gatsby to what we did a few months ago with the Providence Tea Party.
Rhode Island Secretary of State Gregg Amore leads the commission planning the state's 250th celebration events. The state has set aside $1 million. Massachusetts plans to spend double that, while Virginia, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey are earmarking tens of millions for the occasion, though much of that is using federal aid for preservation of historic locations. Do you think $1 million is enough? Is Rhode Island doing enough to celebrate next year?
I think first of all, those states are a lot larger than we are. We're the smallest state, so it would be logical that we would put it in one of the smaller allocations. But the money is very tight right now in a budget, and I would point out that $1 million came out of the legislative budget, and we were happy to do that.
Since there is now representation with taxation, that's what lawmakers ponied up as House Speaker Joseph Shekarchi and other leaders try to close Rhode Island's $250 million budget deficit this year.
And that's all we could afford at this time.
Do you wish we'd be spending more money?
Yeah, I mean, you can always say yes to that question. But I think it's appropriate considering the time we're in and considering the needs across the state.
A proposal to take a cut of the state's meals and beverage tax to raise $2 million for the 250th died in the legislature.
Everyone suggests that, but they don't go talk to the affected parties, the parties that are losing the money. We need to look at other places where we can use some foundation money and some private donation money to make it a really good celebration. But I have every confidence that Rhode Island will show itself very proud.
So what is in the works? Potential plans include a special water fire.
That would include the Rhode Island Philharmonic, would include 250 large American flags, a parade of reenactors.
Rhode Island missed the boat on getting the tall ships to stop on their way from New York to Boston, but there are smaller ships, a second tier of tall ships.
They're a little smaller, but they're tall ships nonetheless, and they stay in port for a longer period of time. There's an educational component around the second tier tall ships that the first don't have.
All 39 cities and towns would plant a Liberty tree, and there are locally planned events as well, some of which have already started, to mark the run-up to the Revolutionary War.
I think we will be able to produce a really special signature program with that money, but we'll also be able to support local initiatives and historical society initiatives and smaller programming that Rhode Islanders will be able to appreciate, but also people visiting the state.
Amore says plans are still evolving as 2026 approaches. Stay tuned for that. And stay tuned as we're about to take you back to a revolutionary event from more than 6 decades ago. We've talked about the idea of building a new state archives to house Rhode Island's important artifacts, but there's a lot of history right here in the State House. The General Assembly first convened here 125 years ago. In 1963, WJAR personality and local art teacher Honey Calvi took viewers inside for an unprecedented tour. It was our first full-color broadcast, and in the spirit of preserving our own past, we recently had the original film digitized and restored, and we're going to bring it to you right now without commercial interruption. I'm Brian Crandall. Enjoy.
You are invited on a unique tour of our magnificent State House in Providence, Rhode Island, located on the crown of beautifully landscaped Smith's Hill, a site selected by the legislature in 1890 for its commanding view of Narragansett Bay, now obscured by the crowded metropolitan skyline. The stately grandeur of this Georgia marble structure, first occupied by the legislature on New Year's Day, 1900, reflects the genius of its designer architects, the New York firm of McKim, Mead and White, who created many other famous public buildings at the turn of the century, and whose draftsman, Henry Bacon, went on to design the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. Let's follow Honey Calvi, television personality and art teacher, as she enters the State Capitol building, walks past the replica of the Liberty Bell, and climbs the marble staircase to meet Governor John H. Chafee for a personally conducted tour. Our visit will start in the main reception room of the Executive Chamber. This ornate salon had been designed just for state functions, but in 1949, Governor Pastore opened this spacious room to provide an appropriate reception room for the steady stream of visitors who call on the governor every day.
This is the second floor of the State House, on which are located the Senate and the House chambers, as well as the offices of the general officers, such as Secretary of State, Lieutenant Governor, and these are the governor's offices. Now, as you'll notice, this is an extraordinary room. This is a type of Renaissance architecture, which I think can hardly be duplicated in the United States anywhere. You'll notice the rich colors, the gold and the deep blues. Lovely chandelier. It just is an extraordinary room.
I was noticing your carpet here. It's a pretty shade of blue. What shade is that?
Well, they call that state blue. Now, don't press me as to what state blue is, but there's an example of it.
Quite large. It's just beautiful.
This room formerly was only used for state occasions, for instance, the inaugural ball and affairs like that. But in 1949, then Governor Pastore opened this room to the public, and it's been used ever since as a reception room for the governor. And this is the room that the public comes to as they wait to see the governor.
It certainly is very impressive, isn't it?
This table and chairs are part of the original furnishings of the State House and were designed by the architect, Mr. McKim, who designed this building.
I see. I noticed these chairs are a beautiful shade of red, and I like that seal on the back. That's all in brocade. A lot of work to that.
Yes, it certainly is a deep lovely red in these furnishings, and I particularly want to call your attention to this marble-top table. That's one entire piece of marble on these deep gilt-colored legs.
Certainly must be quite heavy, isn't it?
Yes, they tell me that it takes 12 men to pick it up and move it, so you can gather that we don't move it very often. Now, we have several fine portraits in this room, and I want to call your attention to this one here of General Nathaniel Greene, who grew up in the Potawatomi section of Warwick. He was a Quaker family who, of course, are opposed to military service, but nonetheless he went and joined the Kentish Guards, which were in East Greenwich. And he went away into the Revolutionary War and ended up as General Washington's #1 man, his top general. He fought particularly in the southern campaigns in the Carolinas.
It's certainly an exquisite painting, and I love the frame around it. It has also has the gold seal of Rhode Island right above it with all that work around it. It's beautiful.
Yes, you don't see frames like that very often anymore, do you?
I guess not.
And over here we have another portrait of a distinguished Rhode Island naval man. That is Oliver Hazard Perry, who gained his great fame in the War of 1812. He joined the Navy as a young man, and at the age of 28, the Navy sent him out to Lake Erie to construct a fleet. He had to build his own ships before he could fight them. And then the next year, in 1813, he met the British in the famous Battle of Lake Erie, and the British squadron, he sunk some of the ships and he captured the others. It was the first time in the history of the British Empire that their entire fleet had surrendered. And he sent his famous message to his superior, "We have met the enemy and they are ours."
You say he was from Rhode Island. What part of the state is he from?
He grew up in South Kingston, Rhode Island, and his home where he grew up is still down there. On this side of the room, we have a picture of President Washington by Gilbert Stuart. In 1800, the legislature commissioned Gilbert Stuart to do two portraits of Washington. This is one, and the other is hanging down at the former state capitol down in Newport. This is probably the most precious possession, well, one of the most precious possessions that we have in the state capitol. It was executed at the nominal price of $600 in those days, but now it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Can you imagine that? And you say this was painted by Gilbert Stuart, and I do remember reading something about him. He's also another famous Rhode Islander, a painter.
That's right. He was born down near Saunderstown in North Kingstown, grew up there, and later went to England and came back and did the famous portraits of Washington that we know throughout the country. Our next stop will be the House of Representatives, the House Chamber, where the House meets. Would you like to come along?
Certainly. Well, I noticed everything is in such excellent condition, Governor. It's just beautiful here.
Yes, we have a crew that's always working to keep it maintained. As you notice, we've got all this marble, and it takes a good deal of work to keep it up into top shape. And actually, because of this good maintenance, in the 60-year history of this building, we've only had to do one major refurbishing.
Is that a bust of Senator Greene?
You're absolutely right. That's a bust of former Senator Greene, who was governor of Rhode Island for 4 years in the mid-30s. And then he went on to the United States Senate, where he served for 24 years. And this bust was unveiled by former Governor Noddy on the occasion of the senator's 94th birthday.
I was noticing all the detail around the eyes and the eyebrows. Very beautiful. It's done so well, isn't it?
Yes, that was done by Miss Gould from West Barrington, a native sculptor from here in Rhode Island. And the senator certainly gave many years of good service to the state of Rhode Island and to the nation as well. These four massive columns which you see, which are made of marble, form the entrance as you go into the House chamber, which, as you can see, is across the rotunda from the Senate chamber. So would you like to go in and take a look at the House chamber where the House of Representatives sits? This is the desk of the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And the Speaker sits up there with an extra chair on either side, and then the various clerks are down here, the recording clerk and so forth, and the newsman out in front. And then there are a total of 100 seats in the chamber, with the Republicans sitting on one side and the Democrats on the other side. And I might say I have a particularly sentimental attachment to this house because I served here for 6 years as a member.
See, I was noticing everything is so tastefully decorated here, isn't it?
Well, it's rather unusual that Mr. McKim, who was the architect of this building, himself designed all the furnishings. In other words, practically everything we have, he himself designed. For instance, these desks, this speaker's desk, and all the furnishings.
I've been admiring the lovely tapestries up here. Very pretty, aren't they?
These extraordinary tapestries were done especially by French weavers in New York City. They brought them over from France to work in the mills there, and up in the top there's a shield which shows Roger Williams' landing in Narragansett Bay when he originally came here. And then on the other side, the same floral arrangement basically, but up in the top you can notice surrounded by the roses is the shield of the state of Rhode Island with the anchor of hope on it. And then of course we have the magnificent columns beside it. The spectators are permitted to come into this chamber. They can sit along the edges if the speaker gives them permission, but that permission is always granted. But in addition to that, they have these two balconies, one on the west side where spectators can come and another on the east side, so that the public always is welcome to come into the chamber and watch the proceedings. But before we leave, I'd like to show you these massive doors which were built for the entrance into this House of Representatives.
Quite large, aren't they, there?
They certainly are. They're fully 14 feet high, and it gives you an indication of when they built this State House. They built everything on a grand scale with the bronze handles. Now we'll go on over to the Senate, and on the way we'll stop at the library, and I can show that to you. On the way to the library, I'd like to show you these life-size statues of figures who served in our armed forces during World War II. And they're made of one piece of marble, and they're sculpted in Rome, Italy, by Costanzo.
They look quite heavy.
Well, they certainly are. They weigh nearly a ton apiece. And as you can see, the figure itself is in one piece of marble, and then, of course, we have the base.
What did some of the other statues stand for? Are they?
Well, this is one of an airplane pilot. We have an artilleryman. A paratrooper. Sailor. Member of the infantry. And an airplane spotter. We have additional war memorials in the form of 4 bronze books. In these 4 bronze volumes are inscribed the names of the 2,200 Rhode Island citizens who lost their lives in World War II. This particular volume begins with the letter M. You can see there's quite a list of them. State Library, which, as you notice, is located across the rotunda from the executive offices of the governor. Now, the library falls under the jurisdiction of the Secretary of State, and in here are kept documents for reference material, primarily for the legislators, so that if there's any particular law or background material they wish to look up, it's all located in here. It's very interesting, the ceiling of this building, this room, has on it 16 seals, which are for various famous printers. It's their trademarks from the early days. But curiously enough, when they built the building, built the room, the architect that designed it slipped in the seal of Harvard University for some reason. And when Senator Greene was then governor in the 1930s, he spotted this Harvard seal in place of what should have been a printer's seal, and so he had it removed and put in its place the printer's seal of the famous printer Caxton from England.
See, the ceiling is certainly interesting. I noticed all the dark, rich greens and browns and golds. They match perfectly with the bindings of all the books.
Yes, it's an extremely attractive, beautiful room.
As we've been walking through all the corridors, Governor Chafee, I've been noticing a lot of the portraits of former governors.
Yes, I'd like to show you some of these as we walk along. Among the collection of portraits of former governors is this 13-foot one of Governor William Sprague. He was governor at the outbreak of the Civil War and assembled a regiment, took it to Washington, and participated in the early battles of that war. Sprague was a fabulous character who went on from the governorship to become United States Senator from Rhode Island and cut quite a figure in Washington, where he married Kate Chase, the daughter of Salmon P. Chase, Lincoln's Secretary of Treasury. And I think that this picture must have been painted on the shore at Narragansett. None of the other portraits are as large as the one of Governor Sprague, but they're worthy of your attention, especially these of colonial governors like William Wharton, who, although he was a Quaker, headed a group of volunteers to fight off the pirates who were plaguing the Massachusetts Bay Colony. And while he was governor, his brother John was his deputy governor. Here's a portrait of Richard Ward, who was active in the founding of Brown University and represented Rhode Island in the Continental Congress. And this is a portrait of Stephen Hopkins, Rhode Island's famous signer of the Declaration of Independence. And as you recall, at that time he said, "My hand trembles, but my heart does not." This is Nehemiah Knight, who came from a Cranston farm, and as governor he advocated statewide public schools, and he later went on to the United States Senate, where he served for some 20 years. And here's a portrait of the famous Civil War general Ambrose Burnside, who after the war became governor. This portrait is of a Newport gentleman scholar named Charles Van Zandt, who was such a popular orator that he was chosen to travel throughout the country speaking in support of Lincoln's campaign for the presidency in 1864. Now, there are many other portraits of governors in the hallways and offices. As a matter of fact, we have a portrait of all the men who served as the chief executive of our state. We're now in the Senate, which you can notice is considerably smaller than the chamber of the House of Representatives. And that's due to the fact that in the Senate there are only 46 members, whereas in the House, as you recall, there are 100 members. And the seating here is a little different than it is in the House. In the House, as you recall, the Republicans sat on one side and the Democrats sat on the other side. Here, the members sit, each chair is allotted to a certain community. In other words, East Greenwich will have a chair, a seat, be the occupant a Republican or a Democrat. And so that means that the Republicans and the Democrats are scattered, mixed amongst each other here. Now, up here is where the President of the Senate, who is the Lieutenant Governor, sits. He occupies that seat there, and either side of him there's an extra chair. And then down in front is a seat for the Secretary of State, who sits there during the Senate activities, and then seats for the various clerks. This chamber, they say, was designed after the old Supreme Court chamber in Washington, D.C., before they built the new Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court House there. And I think of particular interest are these 13 medallions which you see across the arch over the Lieutenant Governor's head. Each stands for one of the 13 original states that came into the Union. And when they restored this, the State House in 1955, they thought that they would paint these medallions in the colors of the seals of each of the states, because previously there too the seals had just been painted white. So they wrote away to each of the states and got the colors of those states that had colors, and they put them in. And then it turned out that we didn't have any colors in Rhode Island's seal, so they had to just paint that a plain bronze color, as you note up there. And then there are a couple of other states that also are just the plain colors.
Beautiful.
Yes, it has a much smaller chamber, which gives it an atmosphere of intimacy, which is not so apparent in the larger House of Representatives. And now, if we'll go along out here, and we'll see the silver service, which is given by the people of Rhode Island to the battleship Rhode Island.
Governor Chafee, do you have many tourists that come to visit the State House?
Well, during the winter months, we have large groups of school children come through, and during the summer months, I've been amazed at the number of people that come from all over the country to visit the State House. We have people from California and Washington and Oregon, and it's proven extraordinary to me, and it shows what an outstanding landmark it is.
Is this the State House silver?
No, this is a set of silver which was given by the people of Rhode Island to the battleship Rhode Island when that ship was commissioned in 1907. And when the ship was decommissioned shortly after World War I, well, the U.S. Navy returned it to the state for display here. And it's an extraordinary set of silver. It's made by the Gorham Company craftsmen. And particularly outstanding, I think you'll notice, is that mammoth punch bowl.
I was noticing on the punch bowl they have the turkeys for handles, and I always thought that the Rhode Island red signifies Rhode Island rather than a turkey.
You're right, Mrs. Calvi. The Rhode Island red is a symbol of our state, and why they use turkeys for these handles, I just don't know. But I think of particular interest are the engravings in the side of this punch bowl. Here you see Roger Williams being greeted by the Indians when he arrived. You see a picture of General Nathaniel Greene and of Oliver Hazard Perry. And then down at the bottom you can see the quahog shells and the seaweed. Let's take a look at the rotunda now, Mrs. Calvi.
Governor, is it true that this is one of the largest domes in the world?
That's right. It's the second largest unsupported marble dome in the world. There are 4 of its kind. The largest is St. Peter's in Rome. As I say, this is the second largest. Then there's one in the State Capitol building of Minnesota, and there's one in the Taj Mahal in India. I think the first thing to notice about the rotunda is the Latin inscription from Tacitus, which is inscribed there, and which translated says, "Rare felicity of the times, when it is permitted to think as you like and say what you think."
Governor, right underneath the inscription there are 4 paintings. Could you please tell me what they signify?
Yes, those 4 medallions were painted by George D. Felice in the late 1940s. He is the State House artist. And one signifies literature, another education, another justice, and another commerce. And then way up at the top, you can notice another group of paintings, which from here the figures look rather small, but actually each of them is 14 feet in height. And one of the groups symbolizes Roger Williams receiving the first land grant from the Indian chief Canonicus and Mayantonomi. The second group symbolizes religious freedom. The third, the beginning of industry. And forth the origin of construction in Rhode Island. And that group also was done by Mr. DeFelice in 1946. Mrs. Calvi, I'm delighted that you came. And I want to call the attention of all our citizens to the fact that we have an extraordinarily lovely Capitol which is open to the public, and the public are encouraged to come and visit it. And we also encourage groups like school children and so forth to come through. We have a regular guide stationed here, and I think it's best for the groups that wish a guided tour to call in for an appointment, which can easily be arranged. And I think all our Rhode Island citizens and people from all over the country ought to have the opportunity and take the opportunity to come and see this extraordinary State House. As you leave, Mrs. Calvi, I want to call your attention to the Civil War cannon, which is located near the vestibule entrance. This cannon was with Battery B of the 1st Rhode Island Light Infantry at the Battle of Gettysburg at the high water mark where Pickett's charge culminated in July 3rd, 1863. Also, I want to call your attention to the flags in the glass cases, which are from the Continental Armies and flags of the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, and World War I.
Governor, I'd like to thank you for this wonderful, personally conducted tour of the State House. I certainly enjoyed it so much, and I learned so much more about Rhode Island and its history.
Governor John H. Chafee's guest on this tour of the Rhode Island State Capitol building was Honey Calvi, WJAR television personality. We're grateful to Governor Chafee and all the state officials and State House personnel whose many courtesies and generous cooperation made it possible to film this unique program. A public affairs production of WJAR-TV, an Outlet Company station.